Happy Mother's Day. John Felt here, and this is the Blue Water Outlook Weekly Weather Briefing for May 12th. Boy, I tell you, we have had a very active spring, especially the last 3 weeks. This week, it does not look quite as active, but we will get some severe storms here and there. I am watching the southern Gulf Coast for some very heavy rain. Let's get started in today's weekly weather briefing. Take a look at all the widespread severe storm activity last week. Yellow being damaging winds, purple being large hail. So not just the typical plains area, the tornado alley right through here, but we also had well into the Midwest and the eastern U.S. severe storm activity. Look at all the tornadoes. Lots of tornadoes scattered about. They weren't again in one axis. They were way into the eastern U.S. as far as West Virginia and Pennsylvania, as far south as Georgia, South Carolina, Dallas, Oklahoma. I didn't count the number of states, but a lot of tornadoes last week. Flooding rain in spots, and even some snow at higher elevations of the west. So here's where our heaviest precipitation was last week. Looks like it was over higher elevations of the west, the Pacific Northwest and California. And I'm going to do a post on this. I need to do some research on water supply in the Sierras. We had some very heavy rain in eastern half of Montana. And then over the southeast U.S. and the Ohio River Valley, some heavy rain, as well as across Iowa. And I always keep an eye on our corn growing states, the real key corn growing states here for precipitation. And it looks like Iowa got a pretty soaking rain last week. You might have seen the Aurora Borealis. We had an extreme, a G5 solar storm Friday and then into the weekend. And that's pretty rare to get those, so a G5. So many areas saw the northern lights that normally would see that. Now, over the last week, temperatures were cooler than normal over the western U.S. and milder than normal over the east. And, you know, we have, just like we have a winter transition to spring, we have a spring to summer transition. I think we're seeing some signs of it down in Texas. Look at South Texas here. Orange and red is indicating temperatures above 95 degrees, red being above 100 degrees. So we're beginning to get that hot weather over areas that are some of the hottest parts of the country. As far as moisture goes, we have a stable air mass over most areas, and let's just use maybe 45 degrees. That's generally used as a consensus for the lower threshold for severe storm development. Let's just sort of look at that as stable air, and you can see many areas are very stable, but the area that our eye goes to is Texas and then along the Gulf Coast, and that is going to be where the action will be this week. There is flooding going on, especially in the areas with the red dots. Still have quite a bit of flooding down at Houston area where we had that extreme rainfall, very flat, so the rivers drain very slow. And also in some of our main stem rivers, we have some pulses of water from past rain. I wouldn't call it significant in most areas. It's more typical spring flooding. So right now what we have is we have a bit of a dip in the jet stream here, and that's brought that cool, stable air into the region. And then by next weekend, what I'm looking at is I'm looking at this area up here. And I think this has the possibility of eventually sinking down to the south and bringing some cool air and basically giving, and I say generally, most of the area, a large part of the area, some pretty nice weather as far as temperatures. And you can sort of see that here. Now, the first 5 days, we are looking at really warm weather in the western U.S. from Washington, Idaho, Oregon, California, some really warm weather. Everywhere else, pretty nice. This is the trend I'm looking at with that area of low pressure, and this is late in the month. We could get some much below normal temperatures over the upper Midwest, but when we look at those really hot departures like we see here, by the end of May, we really don't see it. We see either a little bit above normal or below normal. Overall, this time of year, I would say that's going to be fairly comfortable weather over many areas. I don't see the extremes other than these warm extremes over the next week, and then perhaps some cool extremes late in the month. Okay, so that's temperature. Let's talk about rainfall. And we have a system moving across the south central U.S. into the Midwest, and that's going to bring some heavy rain in spots. This is where it's going to be, and it's going to be in the warm sector, the heaviest rain. That's where the atmospheric moisture is going to be the most significant, and you can see that rain right through here from Texas all the way across to Georgia this week, mainly early this week, another axis in the Midwest. And you know, this area has been wet. Eastern Kansas, around Kansas City, parts of western Missouri, it's been very wet, so we're going to enhance our runoff there. We're also going to enhance our runoff here because we are looking at 4 or 5 inches of rain. Okay, so as far as threats go this week, it's not going to be as widespread as last week's or even the last 3 weeks' severe weather. Last week, you might remember we had moderate risk, level 4. Well, this week right now, we have just level 1, slight risk in these areas today and tomorrow. Perhaps the greater risk is going to be a moderate risk of excessive rainfall. That's this area right here in red, and that's where we're going to have runoff that will be enhanced. And what that means is greater runoff, faster runoff, the greater risk for flash flooding, urban flooding, or flooding on tributaries. Okay, so to end the briefing, here's our 8 to 14 day. We talked about the first week. Look at this here. We are getting that above normal here temperatures. So South Texas is going to feel like summer. And then we're going to have a bit of a reversal in the Pacific Northwest, going from unusually warm to cooler. So that'll be a reversal. Here's our precipitation right here. So that's this week's weather briefing. Again, things to look at this week, especially that heavy rain. We could get quite a bit of flooding in the south central U.S. Overall, though, as far as severe storm activity, I think it'll be much less than we've seen in the last couple weeks. That's this week's briefing. Again, happy Mother's Day. Take care.